You're listening to The Higher Ed Marketer, the podcast for marketing professionals in higher education. Join us every week as we talk to the industry's greatest minds in student recruitment, donor relations, marketing trends, new technologies, and much more. If you're looking for conversations centered around where marketing in higher ed is going, this podcast is for you. Let's get into the show.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Higher Ed Marketer podcast. We're actually in a special mini-series right now called the Faith Leader Series, and it's sponsored by the Association of Biblical Higher Ed. So we're so excited that you have joined us for the series where we're really diving into that intersection of faith and higher ed. And today on the podcast, we have Dr. Phil Cook, who is the president of NACCAP, the North American Coalition for Christian Admissions Professionals. Phil has had some incredible experiences all across higher ed with over 30 years. And Bart, this was a really, really fun conversation with Phil.
It really was. I mean, you'll enjoy spending time with Phil as much as I do. He's become a dear friend of mine, and it's one of those situations where I just love being able to wind him up and let him go. I mean, it's been a lot of fun, and he just kind of gets into not only just the spiritual side of some things, what we need to do as admissions professionals and enrollment and marketers and things like that, but also kind of does a really nice job of weaving that between the business side, the realities of we are businesses at the end of the day. Colleges and universities have a bottom line. We are responsible for those who work with the university and that earn their living. So he does a great job of kind of understanding that, unpacking that, and then just helping us navigate that through this conversation.
Yeah, this episode is packed with a ton of heart and a ton of tactics. And so let's jump into that conversation with Dr. Phil Cook, the president of NACCAP. Phil, we're so excited to have this conversation with you, and we've got this long-standing tradition. You've been on the podcast before, so you know what's coming. Share with us something that is fun or exciting or interesting for our audience.
First of all, thanks for having me back. I worked on a campus for 28 years, and we would talk about chapel speakers, and we said we only have a bad chapel speaker once. So I guess a bad podcast guest only once. So although it's taken 3 years, but who's counting? Anyway, I think this is going to be like not teaching to the test or sucking up to the professor. But recently I was on a webinar that NACCAP hosted, and I learned a phrase called being a tech optimist. And you know what? I need to be that way. And I'm thinking particularly about generative AI and what's going on, how that's all changing. We may pick that up more later. I know you guys talk about that all the time. But it helped me because another phrase was seeing AI or generative AI as a teammate and not a tool. Those two things for me, I mean, quite frankly, in the past 48 hours have impacted my life to make me more optimistic and to use technology better in every part of my life, but also in my professional life. And that's increasingly important for faith-based institutions.
So good. Yeah, it's so interesting in that tech conversation because, you know, as believers, we're hope-filled people. Like we know how the story goes. We know like Christ is seated on the throne. God is in control of these things, and we have to operate from that place of deep hope and trust. And I appreciate that, man. That's great. So you are the president of NACCAP, and for those folks who may not be familiar with NACCAP, give us the rundown. What is NACCAP? What's the work that you guys are doing and all that kind of fun stuff?
Well, that's why I wore my shirt today, because the acronym is quite awkward. This may be cut in post later, but 4 years ago, when I came to this position, I had friends of mine in my former life were surprised but very happy that the NAACP would hire me. They were quite happy for me. They were proud of my progressive whatever. The fact is, the acronym stands for North American Coalition. That's the NAC part. Actually, though, we've grown so much in the past 4 years, it's really not accurate anymore because we are international. We have international K-12s from other countries. We're traveling around the world. We're advancing Christian education every day. But it's North American Coalition for Christian Admissions Professionals. When I'm trying to be cool, which is most every day, and I'm failing at it, I say we're all about the CAP. No cap, because the CAP for us is Christian Admissions Professionals. We exist to serve our members We want them to see an increase in their enrollment. That is our Christian college side. We want our K-12 members to get their students ready to go to a Christian college. If we do that every day, it's a good day. And NACCAP has been around for 55 years. We do that through Christian college fairs. We do that through professional development. We have an annual conference, which you both will be at, which we're thrilled to be a part of. So professional development, advancing Christian education is our North Star. We talk about it every day, and that's what we exist to do.
That's awesome. And you're talking a little bit about enrollment, in that thing, and Christian admissions professionals. Certainly that makes a lot of sense. And I know sometimes when we talk about Christian colleges, they walk this fine line between enrollment performance. And so, hey, we're in the middle of yield season right now. It's May. We're looking May 1 to day 1 type of stuff. How are we going to fill the class out for the fall? And so they kind of walk this fine line between the business of higher ed, but then also the spiritual mission that is inherently part of Christian higher ed. So what does this whole idea of mission-driven recruitment look like to you in today's cultural climate?
Well, first of all, I love that question because I have said this for the past 4 years, and our great friend, Tim Fuller, I even ran it by him, Bart, and made sure that I was saying that it's okay to say this. Yeah. I would have said it whether he agreed or not, because he was the data guy. People talk about being data-driven. I know what they mean. I understand it. We must have good information. Our decisions are only as good as the information that we have in our data. But I am not data-driven. I am mission-driven. I am people-driven. I am relationship-driven, and the data must inform what I'm doing. So mission-driven enrollment looks like keeping my eye on the prize and making sure we're all on the same page doing what we're doing. I was at another event that you guys know about well, where I was presenting at a session in Orlando, Florida with ABHE and our friend Philip Dearborn and David Metters, and presented about this same kind of idea. And just this week, one of our NACCAP members emailed me and said, Phil, I was in the session, but our staff was not. Would you do a 90-second summary of what you said and tell us what you said? And I said, yes, I will. Don't take your eyes off the prize of being mission-driven, ultimately kingdom-driven. That's the dopamine hits that we get. That's the eternal work that we're doing. But the hardcore reality of this is it's a results-oriented business, and Christians get fired too.
Yeah.
Christians lose their jobs when they're not performing as we should. So you have to balance the goals and aspirational and successful work, the business side of that, along with the feel good, the why, my mission, and it's advancing the kingdom and getting more students to be enrolled in our member institutions, because higher education changes people's future. No doubt about it.
Right.
I believe Christian higher education changes eternity. It changes generations. And that's what we do at NACCAP. And what we're trying to do when we say it's mission-driven enrollment is connecting to all of those things.
Yeah, I think I like what you're saying there. And I know that I really appreciate the fact that you use the words business. You use the words, all these things. I mean, you intertwine those things, which I think is so valuable, because I know in higher ed in general, not just Christian higher ed, but in higher ed in general, there's this disdain maybe sometimes for the idea of we're business or we're selling or we're doing this. We are a business. That is the nature of what we're doing. We exchange services and goods for money. And I think that it's good to be able to talk that way, but that's not the way it's always been. And it's not always been this idea of enrollment being as necessary as it is today. I mean, there's a lot of schools, and we could name some schools that are just now turning toward realizing that we need to do enrollment. It's not a catcher's mitt waiting behind home plate to get the denomination students, or we just know these students are going to come because they always have. That's changed significantly in the last 20, 25 years. So talk about how that has changed. I mean, you've been in enrollment for decades, as have I, and you've seen that philosophy shift from that faith-based admissions work where, hey, we're just going to be here to help fill the class with this church, versus now we've got to be more creative and more business-oriented than ever. So kind of talk that through a little bit.
Well, the first thing I would say is I like to eat. I like to live in a home. So when folks, well-intended, people of deep faith don't engage in it, quite frankly, it makes us look like lightweights. It makes Christians look like they can't use their mind. I'm a lot of heart. I lead with heart. I know it. but that doesn't mean I don't have my head. So we've got to be able to think critically and be successful. I have 3 brothers that are not in Christian education. One is a healthcare administrator. Another is a tech IT guy, and the third is a restaurant guy. And they tease me because they say, Phil, we fire people every day, man. Suck it up. I love Jesus, and we can do it. So we have to get away from the mindset of reactive, catcher's mitt. I like that phrase as well, because we must do it in order to be successful. And it starts with leadership. We have to hold people to accountability. When I was on my previous campus, our cabinet was doing cabinet reports. And we each had 30 minutes to do these reports. I went 29 minutes and 47 seconds, poured my heart about all the things that we were doing. And the president at the end of my session held up a piece of paper and he said, Phil, at the end of the day, we're going to put a number on this paper to tell me whether you've done a good job or not. Okay, that's a business model. But that's a business successful model to ensure we're serving students. We can't serve the students that are not in our classes. So we must be sophisticated, intentional, and strategic in the business side of what we do. And again, as our friend Tim Fuller called it, we got to block and tackle well to ensure students are coming to our campus so we can change their lives.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's so good. Well, and I think that helps us understand too, is like, because again, we're in the Christian education environment, we're preparing people for adulthood who are actually going to go and get more jobs. And so when we're setting up systems and structures that support them well and they begin to see that modeled, it actually helps them as they're entering the workforce, because they're not surprised by systems and structures and accountability and all those types of things. Like the Christian education space is a great opportunity to be able to begin to unlock that stuff, even in the admissions process, as they're experiencing healthy systems and structures being exposed to those things. And so I think it's easy, even when we talk about calling and those types of things, to think that the administrative work of the university is different than the calling work of the university. And it's like, no, these things are all together modeling what this looks like for the next generation. And so when we're thinking about some of the meaningful or creative ways that we're seeing colleges integrate faith into the admissions process, right? Because like we've talked, we've got to hit numbers, but we're also pushing people towards discipleship and calling all at the same time. Like, Phil, are there unique things that you're seeing or trends that you're seeing in that admission space that are helping people just be more creative in this season?
Yeah. Well, first of all, a word about calling, if I might. I mean, I think Zach and I are the frustrated ministers in this, frustrated pastors in this group. I'm not sure what that means. Bart is. I don't know what Bart's. He's not a frustrated entrepreneur because nobody does better than Caylor Solutions. But I will say the idea of calling is an interesting one, right? Our whole lives, if you grew up in church, people say, I'm called to be a minister. I'm called to be, am I called to be an accountant? No. Here's my theory on what calling means. Calling is love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind. Calling is come after me and make fishers of men. That's what your calling is. Now, what are your gifts? What are your strengths? I do think people can call to be a minister. I do think that people can be called to be in music, but what am I good? Line me up with what I'm doing well every day. And what did they say? When you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Yeah. So on my report card growing up, I got talks too much, a whole lot on my report card. And now, for 30 years, as Bart said, I get paid to talk to people and tell the story of the gospel, but tell the story of Christian education. So, and I think that flows really well into what institutions are doing in terms of the authentic faith-based part of their recruitment. You know, it's hard to hide a faculty member in a classroom if she is really integrated in her faith. That professor, that faculty member who starts the class off with a devotion, or that math teacher who is somehow threading the needle or weaving the story of how God's plan for your life fits into a math equation. You can't hide that when it's authentic. So you got to get students in front of those kind of folks to hear the story, and it'll be authentic. So we got it first, but it starts with mission clarity too. The schools that are thriving, in my opinion, in NACCAP, are ones that are very clear on their mission. Yep. Those missions can be different. Some of our institutions can be in a progressive or conservative model, very conservative. And we could name some schools that are very conservative and they're beating off students with a stick because so many are coming. Yeah. Then we have some that are pretty progressive in the Christian world, maybe not in the secular space, but they've said, here's our lane, and they're growing. Have to be clear to mission to stay on point, and then the message must be consistent as well. That is the message of authentic faith lived out on our campus. Do we require chapel? Do we not? Do you have to do a minor in in religion or Bible or not? Are all our faculty members in our schools believers and follow Jesus? Absolutely. So you must have authentic interactions and experiences with how your institution highlights faith and emphasizes faith. And I believe students will come when they see that.
Yeah, I mean, that is the exact premise of the book that I wrote last year, Chasing Mission Fit. The idea that if you define who you are and you're clear with that and you articulate it very well, and then you go after the students that fit with that and they really do well and they graduate and they tell other people around it, those are the students that you want. The last thing you want to do is to have a recruit to your soccer team showing up and saying, you take this Jesus thing seriously. What's that about? Yeah. You miss the mark if they show up on campus and say that, because if they don't know who you are and they didn't either disclose that or self-remove themselves or something, there should be no surprises during orientation week. You should be very clear.
Yeah, that real quickly, the truth in advertising thing is so important. My mentor in this industry, 6'6" guy, came to play basketball at the institution that we graduated from. He was not a believer. They didn't hide it. The coach was very clear. He went to this institution, was a really good player, came across someone, a coach, who invested in his life and told him about the gospel, changed his life, wonderful family life. So you're clear about it and you don't have any surprises. You can be successful also doing a little bit of conversion work as well, which gets me jazzed up too.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the where I want to thread the conversation, keep going forward, because you talked about this idea with coaches, with admissions teams, with counselors, with marketing teams, even the VPs and directors. They're sitting down with the families, so they're often the first touch point for the student's perception of what this Christian campus should be. I mean, maybe they've seen it in brand awareness, or maybe they've had a friend tell them about it, or however they discovered it and however they got into the process. That relationship sometimes often the very first touch point that they have. So how can enrollment leaders really equip their staff? I mean, talk about the counselors, the directors, the campus coordinators. How, especially those that are new to the field, because I know that NACCAP has some programs with the fly-in, drive-in, and you can talk about that. But how can they be clear and compassionate with the way that's going to be really that's going to be specific to this generation? Because I know Zach has done a lot of work with Next Gen Ministries, and you have as well, Phil. But we have to really make sure that we craft our message in the way that first impression touch point really strikes the prospective student and the influencers, i.e. mom. Talk that through a little bit. How do you really help your younger staff get ready for that?
Well, a minister friend of mine years ago, when we were starting off, I was a youth pastor for a year. I couldn't survive it. I wasn't cut out for it, so I bailed on it. He stayed in it. And one of the things he said, which is very late 80s, 90s, he says, Phil, real recognizes real. And students in particular, I'm a Gen Xer. And the generations after us, they can smell it a mile away if you're not authentic and you're faking it. So the fake it till you make it? No, sir, not me. For me, it starts in the terms of staff. Hiring tough, managing easy is something that I've done. Now, that's hard to say when we're paying admissions counselors pennies or visit. I get it. But for me, we sold the heck out of our staff members. This is the best place to work on campus. There's no better job that you'll ever have to introduce you to professional life than what we're going to do. And we were successful. We're successful now in recruiting board members. So people have to believe and really believed in the product and the people, and then it's infectious. I believed in my campus when I was a student in 1988 because our president believed so much in it. And the secret was, it wasn't that impressive. We were struggling. We were just a couple years away from shutting down. But now that campus, my alma mater, is thriving and growing and going through some exciting stages. So I believed because he believed, and because you got to be around people that believe. I'm sounding like Ted Lasso over here, but I'm not mad at that because it's true. You also do have to do the work and prepare your people to know what they're talking about. So the lazy or lackadaisical, sloppy lack of training, which is where NACCAP comes in. So we do sessions for new admissions counselors. We're serious about this being professional. You're not a paraprofessional. You're a professional. You're going to learn and grow on this, and so it's training on the front end, ongoing tutelage, mentoring. I love that, Bart, and it's a really strong part of what we do at NACCAP, and I miss being on a campus to show students they love it. You love them, you love what you do, you're going to be successful, and they're going to be a part of what you're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I want to circle back to when you said real Say that one more time, because
Real recognizes real.
Real recognizes real. I mean, that if you don't take anything else away from today's podcast when it comes to this idea of admissions and all that, like, this is so huge. And let me speak just for a second from this point of view of me. It was just like, I'm a millennial, and so we're started, my kids are a little bit younger, but I have lots of friends who are doing the college search and all that stuff. And we talk about who are the decision makers, all that kind of stuff. The millennial sniffer on reel to reel is so high. And and again, it's kind of funny that this came up again, because we talked about this with Philip Dearborn, of just the uniqueness of different generational perspectives and all those types of things. And I think really recognizing that the consistencies that parent or that student is going to see from app to admissions all the way through is so vital. And especially as a millennial parent, millennial parents just don't tolerate the inconsistencies. Like and I think us being really honest about that in the higher ed space is going to be so important for us as we think about what does enrollment continue to look like. And so I appreciate you really calling that out, man, because, and especially in the faith-based space, we've seen so much moral failure specifically over this season's been really, really hard, which has done nothing but heighten that skepticism for people. So however we can start alleviating that skepticism, even in our systems and processes, circling all the way back to the business side of what we're doing, it's such a big deal. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, Phil, because I think that's a level of honesty that we have to have, not just in our systems, but in our people, because people are making real decisions about their kids based off of being real. And so I appreciate that, man.
You said something that I'm going to add to next time I'm on a podcast, somebody says, what have you learned new? I'm going to say millennial sniffer. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to look it up, Zach. So, but I know what you're saying there, because when you go through things in life, and everyone does, you develop a kind of a skepticism for what's going on. So I want to know people are going to speak truth to me, tell me the truth. Yep. And respect me enough to do it. And when you don't do that, and even more so for people of faith, I think Scripture is replete with the idea, that there's nothing wrong with that. Now, there's also opportunity. Sometimes people are reluctant to be transparent. But in the recruitment process, sales doesn't work if you're a used car salesman. Right. And I talk too fast sometimes, I know, but you have to be truthful and be real. And when that happens, people and parents, and most important, mom, will be happy about it. And then they're going to come back and check you out even further.
So good. That's great. So let's pull back a little bit further again. And you have such a unique perspective where you're looking across multiple institutions. You're interacting with multiple institutions across NACCAP and across the country. What trends are you seeing in enrollment marketing leader space? Like, what are the patterns? What are the things that you're seeing bubble up freshly here in 2025? Like, what are those things that you're seeing just repeatedly are kind of bubbling towards the top?
Yeah, I always like to come up with a couple things right away to try to be impressive and show my depth of knowledge. But the digital media, the marketing, all of those things that you guys are experts on, I see a lot of people doing that. And my take on that is if all it takes is that, then everybody would be successful. Right. If it's just the digital media ad, if it's just this ad spend, if it's just this search optimization, all those things, then everybody would be successful, right? So, but a very specific thing that came to mind in preparing for this is a trend now is direct admissions. So it used to be the recruitment funnel we called them white cards or inquiry cards, and people would fill them out. And NACCAP still does it with our Christian college fairs, 132 of them coming to around the country this fall. So we do those all over the country. And so we still do the scan, get the information, and start the communication flow, texting, all the things that we do, print media, all those things. But direct admissions is coming down the funnel that says their first interaction with a student is going to be, you're accepted to our institution. Now, there's some conversation out there about it that people may not see as a greater return or not. But one of our key board members is sold on it. He works with a vendor, but he's also doing it on his own. So you're basically just getting them through the pipeline quicker and saying, we've got something for you. It's the shiny, there's something to be said for that. You got to have something to entice them. Then if they'll come take a look at you more closely, you have authentic programs, authentic people, and successful outcomes, then you get a chance for them to be a part of it. So the most recent trend I've seen would be the direct admissions piece of it. That also goes along with digital marketing, all of those things. But what I'm also seeing is kind of a return to old school. campus visits, the fly-in drive-in events that Bart referenced earlier. This is an event that NACCAP institutions bring Christian school counselors to their campus, recruit them, and then they go back, because the data still show that college counselors are still influential in the process. And in particular at Christian colleges, or Christian schools, Christian K-12s. And that's where NACCAP's growth is right now. And that's where we're feeding that opportunity to go old school, go grin and grip, face-to-face, relationship building, and see how that impacts your enrollment as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to pick up on that, Phil, because I think, and Zach and I've talked about this, is the idea that with the impact of generative AI, and it's coming fast, and it is here, and if you're not already invested in figuring it out, call me and call Zach and we'll help you figure it out. But this is going to be the greatest opportunity that I've seen in generations for Christian colleges, because the amount of artificial anything is going to be the norm. So students are going to be going through Instagram. Every post is going to be artificial. It's going to be, the influencers are going to be artificial. It is going to be just so much a normal part of our life that we don't know whether that's generated or if that was real. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be it's the air we're going to breathe. They are going to be looking for authenticity more than they ever have. And Christian schools have that in spades. We have authenticity. We have community. We are biblically based, and we have that all day long. And if we can start to figure out how to authentically show that, how to authentically show who we are and the community that we're going to be here, there are going to be people who are going to be demanding that, who want that. That's going to be our number one selling point, is come to a traditional 4-year experience that's going to be transformative for you to be in Christian community with other people that's safe, authentic, and real. Yeah. Because, they're going to be able to, yesterday I heard Walmart is starting a new university. You are going to be able to get a degree at your Walmart. So what is going to separate the idea of an outcome, which everybody needs, and we need to present that, but we also need to say that not only you're going to get this, but you're going to get all this smorgasbord. So why would you ever choose anything beyond that? That's going to be the key. And so I just want you to maybe react to that a little bit, Phil, because I think that you're seeing that. You're seeing the trends. You and I have talked enough about this stuff. I'm just curious what you think.
Yeah. Well, first of all, when I saw your tweet or your post yesterday or today about Walmart, my heart skipped a little bit, because I was like, oh gosh, the pressure of it, the competition for our institutions. Because the price point's going to be there, and so when people look only through the lens of how quickly I can get through my degree, how much it's going to cost, return on the investment, it's the business way to look at it, and I'm not mad at that, but we have to do a better job of arguing for the whole person development, which is exactly what you said about faith-based institutions. I'm pretty sure that gospel can withstand the gospel, any sort of technology change.
Yeah.
So it withstood and you're better at this than I am, Bart, but however we started pounding, words into rocks, or then we get the printing press, or then we get radio, and then TV and internet. And now this, when you talk about this, you assure me, you remind me, because it is daunting and intimidating to a kind of getting old guy to be intimidated by it. But where I find my rhythm, where I find my strength, is ultimately in that relationships, one-on-one, classroom, face-to-face experience is our lane, and we have to lean into it, brace it fully to be able to do what we're going to do, and what ultimately what our mission is. It's going to be difficult, as you mentioned. I also would say, I think there's also a challenge of institutions changing their budget spending on these kind of things. I didn't do that previously. We had this money, do that. Well, we're going to have to take some money from somewhere else to better serve. Now, that's a good plug for your businesses, but I'm saying it's the truth. We're going to have to reallocate resources in a different way, because the recruitment process is different and the technology space is changing so quickly.
And we're going to have to be smarter with not doing things we've always done because we've always done them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As well as, spending with people that we can't trust or that we don't know the right questions to ask. Yeah. I'm in the middle of writing a new book right now, and it's all about, as a leader, these are the questions you need to ask when you're looking at marketing. If you're just going down the road and saying, I don't really know what a conversion is, I think that's a lead. No, it's a click. And so being able to understand those things, I think, is really going to be critical for leaders to be able to be savvy enough to ask the right smart questions. And so that's good. Really good.
Well, and to your point about the environment, I just think we can't skip past that, because the sales pitch forever has been, what, to your point, Phil, value, job, like that. It's been that very business mindset of an approach to the degree. Whereas I think in the Christian higher ed space, we're not just talking about a knowledge transfer or a skill equipping. We're actually talking about the offer of discipleship transformation in a community of believers. And that is such a separator from so many other environments we're a part of. When actually I was in a conversation yesterday with my sister-in-law, and she was thanking my mother-in-law because she had gone to a Christian institution, and she said that was the tipping point for my life where I actually began to understand discipleship and following Jesus in a fresh way. And so being able to recognize that in this age of AI is going to really help each of our institutions really take a step forward. And so, Phil, as you think about more opportunity, where are some of the other opportunities in the midst of all this where you're seeing Christian colleges being able to thrive? Where are those other places of opportunity that you're seeing?
One of the things that we have some of our, I'm thinking of our members, I go right to our members, there are members having success in being creative in the academic programs. So they have to, I was on a campus a couple weeks ago in Pennsylvania, and I had never been to their campus. And I go into their, and everybody talks about this now, but their engineering space. There were hundreds of students in this. I was blown away that one of our institutions had this fully functional results-oriented, linear thinking, logical thinking degree program. And they talked about that in this recruitment day. But they also talked about how they're developing the students to be better decision makers, better people, ethics. And it was a well-rounded liberal arts education about how to think better. And I remember I was on my campus a few years ago. We had a very prominent family come in, and their kids actually come into our campus. But after the tour, the father said to me, I think he was joking with me, said, "You're a liberal arts university. How liberal are you?" And I said, well, no, I don't mean that we're liberal. It means we're getting you to challenge your thinking. Yeah. The idea that Christians can't be critical thinkers and can't be ethical people, we have to push back on that narrative. So it's the development of the whole person. It's the development of getting degree programs that will be successful, business, the professional programs, nursing, engineering. We got to do that. We got to do it well. We've got to have our students be competitive. But at the same time we're doing that, we're not going to sacrifice our core value and our mission that we are doing this for the kingdom, and we're having you hopefully become a better person that will follow Christ. That's why we do it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And as we talk about these different opportunities, the challenges, what do you think might be a vulnerability? I know every leader carries a burden. There are presidents listening to this. There's vice presidents listening to this. There's things that are keeping them up at night. I know things that would be keeping me up at night. What do you think, and what do you hear as you're kind of visiting with different leaders on Christian campuses? What are a couple that you think are some things that we need to really, think about, have in prayer, and just pay attention to?
Yeah, a couple of things we've talked about already, but there was a time that I was up in the middle of the night on my campus, and I was emailing at 2:30 in the morning, and the president responded, and he said, "You want to go for a walk?" in the middle of the night. So we did. We went for a walk, and shockingly, with what we're talking about, what was top of mind for us was enrollment. Mm-hmm. It was, and so it seems repetitive, but the overall weight of leadership and the loneliness of it can be suffocating. Sometimes the silence can be deafening. And so when women and men are leading our institutions, they carry the weight of that. So being very aware of who I am, being very well of my skill set and my strengths, being very well of my own spiritual well-being. I don't do as well as I should in terms of my health, physical health all the time, but spiritually, the person, we've got to be able, that's quite literally a burden that our leaders carry. It's enrollment. It's the enrollment, and I heard somebody the other day say, not the enrollment cliff, because the slope is not carrying down, that it's gradual, and there are some places of growth out there. There's an opportunity in some of our states. You might recognize the witchy data that go into play here, and so it's interesting. The place I used to live, the highest state projected graduation increase in the next few years is Tennessee, where I used to live, 15% increase, and then South Carolina 14%, Texas 12%, but that's just in the Southeast. There's a very real pressure for our friends in the Northeast. Yeah. So I'd imagine, and in the Northwest and Southwest, there are presidents and there are enrollment leaders who stay up at night worrying about whether people are going to lose their jobs. I did it for many years. Ultimately, I think businesses constrict, and grow. But for me, the bigger burden is if this student doesn't get to our campus, they'll never know what we can do to change their life. Yeah. So that's the thing that keeps me up at night. Yes, we need the numbers. Yes, we need the results, but we need those students, not because of the number, but because of the person that they are, because of the plan that God has for their lives. That's what will keep me up every night and keep me working hard to ensure we're being as successful as we can.
That's so good. That's so good, man. We're going to pull this conversation into a close now, and we could talk for another hour, but we're gonna land the plane here. When you're thinking with all the conversation that we've had today, do you have a piece of advice, some insight? What would you leave us with, man? What would be that nugget of truth that you'd leave us, just to leave us in that place of leading courageously?
Well, I mentioned already that I'm a frustrated pastor, and when you talk about a nugget of truth, I believe truth, big T, comes in Scripture, comes in the knowledge of Christ. So in recent months, I've been sharing. Our middle daughter had a baby this year, our second grandchild, and very quickly we had emergency C-section. We were rushed. She was rushed into the emergency room, and we had 90 minutes in there when we didn't know what was going on. Mm-hmm. We didn't know if my daughter was okay. We didn't know if the baby was okay. And there were a lot of things going in my mind. But do you know what was the worst? The waiting was the worst. The waiting and not knowing if we're going to get the job, be successful, have a good result this coming fall. The waiting was the worst. So the two things we did while we were waiting, we did work. Now, not me, but the doctor was in there working. He had seen this thousands of times. He was prepared. He was equipped. He was trained. He did the work, and the baby was delivered and is healthy. So while they were working, my family and I were worshiping. So while I'm waiting for whatever's in your life, now this has a more spiritual tone that maybe not enrollment specific, but there are parallels. While you're waiting, don't stop working. Don't waste the waiting in your life when you're waiting for an answer. Do the work. Do worship, open your Bible, read it, be a part of other believers, be around each other. I believe that'll make you a better enrollment leader. That'll make you a better marketer, especially, of course, at our Christian institutions. So that's where I am in my personal life right now, and it's driving me to be as successful as I can and to drive NACCAP in the future forward, because we're wide open. We're not slowing down. The hour's too urgent, and we're serving our institutions well, and that's our goal every day.
And thank you so much for that. And I hope our listeners really take that to heart, because I think that framework of working and worshiping is exactly the place we find rest and peace in the midst of chaos. And so I appreciate that dearly, man. So people want to connect with you, get involved in NACCAP fairs and trainings and all that kind of stuff. How can they get in contact with you, man?
Two quick websites, findyourchristiancollege.com. Hundreds of thousands of visitors to that website now that we've experienced the last couple of years. It's how you can learn more about there's financial aid resources. You can search for a Christian college. You can find out information about our college fairs in the fall and spring. Findyourchristiancollege.com. Professionals in this organization, in this industry, NACCAP.org. And my email is phil@NACCAP.org. We're eager to serve everybody in every way we can.
Awesome. Well, man, we thank you so much for today's conversation. It's been so good from my heart, and I think really just a beautiful blend of strategy and heart, which is who you are, Phil. So we're really, really grateful for that, man. So we want to say thanks. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, my friends, and I'm glad to be a part of what y'all are doing.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for listening today to this conversation on the Higher Ed Marketer podcast and our Faith Leaders series. We've got more episodes coming to you here in the next couple weeks as well. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe to our show. And if you would be so kind, we would love for you to leave a review and tell your friends. You can find us on LinkedIn at the Higher Ed Marketer, and we look forward to more things coming up this summer as well. And so the Higher Ed Marketer podcast is powered by Caylor Solutions, your go-to partner for higher ed marketing strategies and enrollment branding needs. And the Faith Leaders series, this mini-series, has been sponsored by ABHE. The Association of Biblical Higher Ed is an organization dedicated to strengthening institutions committed to biblical faith-based learning. So again, thank you all for joining us today. And until next time, jump over on LinkedIn and hang out with us there, and we'll see you soon. Thanks a lot.